The day her mother died from illness, she collapsed from exhaustion. When she regained consciousness, memories of her past life returned. She remembered the novel When a Saintess Falls from the Sky and the figure of Duke Rozenta Estella, a man admired for his beauty but absent for most of the story, never confessing to any heroine. She had once pitied his role, but now she found herself living within the same world. Not long after, a man appeared at her door. He asked if she was Jane Veronica's child. When she confirmed, he delivered his master's order to bring her along. With nothing left to keep her behind, she followed him. His master turned out to be none other than the Duke of Estella. The Duke regarded her coldly, displeased to see a girl. When she acknowledged him as her father, he dismissed the title, saying it was unwelcome. Annoyed, she asked why he had sought her out at all. He replied with indifference that perhaps he should be grateful for the mistake of that night. Since he had recently learned he could no longer father children, it was better to have a half-blood heir than for the Estella line to end completely. She asked if she would be living there from now on. The Duke replied that since she was his last living offspring, she would remain. His words puzzled her. Last offspring? In the novel, his only son had been Rozenta Estella. The Duke's tone was filled with disappointment as he explained that the Estella family had produced sons for generations. By tradition, he too should have had a male heir. With no choice left, he declared she would become his son. From that moment, her name would be Rozenta Estella, the sole heir and future Duke. She was stunned. Rozenta? Did that mean the second male lead she remembered was never truly a man but a girl forced into the role? The realization struck like cold water. She tried to protest, insisting she was just an ordinary girl. The Duke dismissed her easily, remarking that if she were truly ordinary, she would have trembled under his intimidation instead of daring to call him father. To him, this only proved she had the spirit for the role. All she needed was time and the right training. The girl once known as Rosa had become Rozenta Estella. With the aid of polymorph magic, her body had been reshaped into that of a man. Today, she was expected to attend an audience with the Emperor, accompanied by her father. Before leaving, the Duke reminded her, more like lectured her, on how to act before the Emperor and the Crown Prince. She had already heard the same instructions a dozen times, but apparently repetition was part of noble education. Inwardly, she felt a thrill. The Crown Prince was one of the male leads of the novel, a character she had only admired from the pages of her past life. Though she had no intention of meddling with the original plot, the thought of seeing him up close in the Imperial Palace stirred her excitement. After all, who wouldn't want to meet their favorite character in person? At the palace, she carried herself with elegance and offered her greetings to the Emperor, earning a satisfied nod. The Emperor then asked her to meet the Crown Prince, who happened to be with Vivian. Vivian, another familiar name. In the novel, she was the witch who longed for the Crown Prince's affection, though her love was never returned. Instead, she had turned to schemes and jealous plots against him and the true heroine, only to meet her downfall at his hands in the end. Hearing Vivian's name unsettled her. The witch was trouble in the novel, and she doubted reality would be kinder. When the door opened, Vivian came rushing forward, tears streaming, crashing directly into her. Rozenta steadied her and asked if she was all right. Vivian shook her head, sobbing that she was searching for the Crown Prince. When asked if she knew where he was, Rozenta admitted she had just arrived. At that, Vivian burst into louder tears, wailing that the Crown Prince always ran from her. Rozenta handed her a handkerchief, which Vivian snatched before fleeing in embarrassed haste. Watching her retreat, Rozenta couldn't help but be amused. This future schemer looked more like a startled rabbit than a villainess. Entering the room, she found it empty and drifted toward the balcony. The garden stretched below, bright and beautiful, when a voice spoke above her, remarking how pretty the view was. Looking up, she spotted someone perched in a tree, casually eating an apple. It was the Crown Prince himself, the male lead of the novel. He eyed her curiously and called her the son of that snake, the Duke of Estella. Rozenta hurried to offer a proper greeting. The prince smirked, saying she resembled her father, though with less boldness. She gave a stiff laugh, admitting that was what many people said. This version of the Crown Prince felt entirely different from the one she remembered. A supposed tyrant, Yet here he seemed lively, even cheerful. Before leaving, he offered her a piece of advice: stay away from Vivian. She was, in his words, a leech who clings to anyone, whether they want her or not. Rozenta filed the warning away, though part of her thought he could have chosen a less insect-like comparison. When the crown prince departed, Vivian appeared once more, shyly offering her greeting as if nothing had happened earlier. Vivian had been caught by her maid, leaving Rozenta with nothing else to do. She picked up a book and settled onto the sofa. Moments later, Vivian trailed after her, also taking a book and sitting a little distance away. When Rozenta glanced up, she noticed Vivian peeking at her from behind the pages. Amused, she asked if Vivian had something to say. Vivian stammered before admitting the handkerchief she had borrowed was now dirty, and she would replace it. Rozenta assured her it wasn't necessary, but Vivian, flustered, declared she would repay with not one but 200 handkerchiefs. Rozenta almost wondered if she had just been signed up for a lifetime supply. After a while, Vivian drifted to the dressing table, attempting to tame her curly hair. The comb caught and she struggled. Rozenta rose and offered to help, brushing through the curls before Vivian could even protest. As she worked, her gaze wandered toward the window, where she spotted the crown prince peeking in from the side. The sight was so unexpected she nearly laughed out loud. A tyrant in the novel, yet here he was, reduced to tree climbing and window spying. When it was time to return, Rozenta followed the Duke's trail, only to be stopped by Vivian, who clung to her as if parting were a tragedy. Even her father seemed startled by her persistence. Vivian insisted she needed more time to play, refusing to let go no matter what others said. Rozenta, however, remained calm. With a polite smile, she asked Vivian to release her hand and promised they would meet again. The gentle response worked where authority had failed, and Vivian reluctantly let her go. Afterward, the emperor asked Theodore, the crown prince, what impression Rozenta had left on him. Theodore replied that he was like a placid lake, calm, without a single ripple, yet he could not fathom how such a child had come from a man as sinister as the Duke of Estella. A fair question Rozenta herself might have agreed with. Meanwhile, the Duke was satisfied with her conduct at the imperial palace. As a reward, he granted her permission to go outside, provided she was accompanied by Hiorin, his trusted guard. Soon after, he announced it was time to begin her true education, the legacy of the Estella bloodline. It was a gift, or perhaps a curse, for their family possessed a power bound not by choice but by inheritance. A power of curse itself, which few could wield. The next day brought a dancing lesson. The atmosphere felt livelier than usual, and when Rozenta asked the Countess why, she explained she had invited a young lady as a partner. To Rozenta's surprise, that partner turned out to be Vivian, who practically glowed with joy at the sight of her. Rozenta, on the other hand, nearly stumbled at the coincidence. After a long day of practice, both collapsed into rest, too tired to keep up formalities. Watching Vivian beside her, Rozenta wondered if this was what the crown prince had meant by calling her a leech. Unable to hold back, she asked directly if Vivian was following her. Startled, Vivian denied it, claiming it was coincidence. Rozenta, unconvinced, pointed out that Baroness Ferrora was her private mentor, and she likes honesty. Cornered, Vivian confessed. She had asked her father for help in following Rozenta because she wanted to be close. Unlike others who cursed her, Rozenta never treated her with cruelty. And besides, she admitted shyly, Rozenta was very pretty. The blunt honesty broke through Rozenta's composure, and she laughed, truly laughed. Vivian was nothing like the scheming witch she remembered from the novel. Instead, she was endearingly honest, almost too cute for her own reputation. It seemed even villains were not safe from revision when reality stepped in. Rozenta, curious, asked Vivian if she liked the crown prince. Vivian admitted she did, but quickly added that if Rozenta disliked him, she would do her best to dislike him too. That part, Rozenta thought, at least matched the novel, Vivian's fixation on the prince. She assured Vivian it was fine to like him, but gently asked if she would feel comfortable being followed everywhere. Vivian shook her head, realizing the point. Rozenta thanked her for her honesty and suggested that next time, instead of suddenly appearing, they make a plan to meet. The word startled Vivian, who blinked in disbelief. "Plans with me?" she asked. Rozenta gave her a soft smile and asked, "Will you be my friend?" Vivian answered without hesitation, almost bursting with joy. "Yes." And just like that, Rozenta realized she had made her very first friend in this new world. That night, the Duke summoned Rozenta to the greenhouse. It was time for her first true lesson, necromancy, the power only the Estella bloodline could wield. He explained that even words alone carried enough strength to cast a curse, and instructed her to empower that force. Rozenta barely understood what he meant. To demonstrate, the Duke spoke a single word, "Wilt." At once, the flowers in his hand shriveled into dust. He then handed her a few blooms, ordering her to wilt them the same way. Rozenta tried, but before anything happened, she doubled over, coughing up blood, and fainted. The flowers remained untouched. The Duke's expression hardened, disappointment flashing across his face. Muttering about her commoner blood, he ordered the guard to clean the mess, his voice sharp with anger. Yet as he turned, his eyes widened. Half the garden had withered away in silence. It wasn't that her ability failed, it had simply gone far beyond the small target. A slow, eerie smile spread across his lips. Perhaps her powers were not limited after all, but instead greater than anything he had imagined. For Rozenta, it meant one thing. Her lessons would now begin with control. When Rozenta woke, she found that the Duke had sent her an artifact, a tool meant to suppress her magic and make it easier to control. With it, practice became smoother, and soon she advanced far enough in her lessons to finally be allowed outside the castle. Hyorin accompanied her, as always, but this time there was also a small child with long black hair, hidden behind a wolf mask. He seemed to be Hyorin's disciple. Because of some urgent call, Hyorin left midway, leaving Rozenta and the masked child alone. She tried asking his name, but he remained silent. Calling him hey or kid felt too impolite, so she casually gave him a temporary name, Enoch. The boy reacted like a startled puppy every time she called out to him, sticking close to her side all day. By the time they returned to the castle, she had grown used to his quiet, loyal presence. On her next outing, however, when she asked after Enoch, Hyorin only said he had already sent the boy away. His talent had bloomed too quickly, leaving nothing more to teach. Just like that, the child was gone. And with each passing day, Rozenta noticed his memory slipping further from her mind, as if Enoch had never existed at all. By now, Rozenta had received her 100th handkerchief. Vivian had been relentless, sending one every day out of the 200 she'd prepared. When Rozenta arrived to meet her, Vivian ran to him with her usual enthusiasm, hugging him tightly. She then announced, brimming with excitement, that she had invited a guest. Rozenta asked who it was, and the answer nearly made him sigh, the Crown Prince. The prince greeted politely as he sipped his tea, his posture composed. But the room was thick with awkwardness, Vivian fidgeting, the prince avoiding her gaze, and Rozenta caught between them like an unwilling referee. Then, in her nervousness, Vivian accidentally spilled scalding tea onto her own hand. She cried out in pain. Rozenta rushed to her side immediately, but the maids quickly came and whisked her away to be treated, leaving Rozenta and the Crown Prince alone. The silence stretched uncomfortably until the prince finally spoke. He asked if being too accommodating with Rozenta would only make things harder for himself. Rozenta merely shrugged, answering with calm simplicity, "We're friends." The Crown Prince's lips curved into a mocking smile. "I told you to stay away from that leech, yet here you are, tamming her." Rozenta frowned at the choice of words. Friends can't be tamed, they just grow closer. Theodore tilted his head, amused. "Is that so? Then why did Vivian come to me, apologize for following you around, and politely ask if I'd be her friend?" Rozenta blinked in surprise. She never imagined Vivian would actually listen to advice. "So, did you accept her request?" He replied flatly, "I asked her to first explain why she wanted it so badly, whether she was trying another angle to cling on. That's why I came here." Rozenta, however, completely misread the situation. Her eyes widened, and she asked with all seriousness, "Wait, are you saying you've fallen for Vivian?" Theodore's face instantly twisted in disgust. So much for calm, noble composure. Rozenta had successfully broken it in one sentence. Whatever the reason, from that day onward a new bond was formed. Whenever Rozenta attended one of Vivian's gatherings, the crown prince was always there too. And just like that, the three of them became inseparable. Time passed, and all of them grew older together. At today's gathering, Rozenta was quietly tending to Vivian's hair. Theo, watching, teased her for not being able to do it herself. Vivian ignored him, but the two soon slipped into their usual bickering. Rozenta, brushing through the curls, thought to herself marriage between them. Please, they'd be lucky not to end up sworn enemies. Trying to keep peace, she told them to stop fighting. Theo smirked and brought up how Vivian had once come to him crying, asking to be his friend. That set Vivian off. She snapped that she must have been blind back then. Rozenta calmly threatened to leave if they kept going, and just like that, both fell silent. He couldn't help but laugh. Somehow, this was what friendship looked like between them. But then the unexpected struck. The Duke of Estella met with a sudden accident and died. Soon after, the emperor fell gravely ill and never woke again. Rumors spread murder, but no trace of the culprit. In the aftermath, Theodore had no choice but to ascend the throne. And Rozenta, left behind, inherited the title of heir to the Estella duchy. At the emperor's funeral, Rozenta searched the hall but couldn't find Theodore anywhere. Stepping outside, she finally saw him, alone in the rain, shoulders trembling as he cried. Without thinking, Rozenta let her umbrella fall and wrapped him in a tight embrace. From behind, Vivian arrived and stopped in her tracks at the sight. Her eyes welled with tears, and quietly she stepped forward, raising her umbrella over them both. Soon, all three of them stood together, shielded from the rain, Theo grieving, Rozenta holding him steady, and Vivian silently crying with them. It was the first truly wholesome moment they shared, not as nobles, not as heirs, but simply as friends.